Transforming Education for National Development for a Brighter Tomorrow. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the media briefing of the Education Transformation Oversight Committee. My name is Stacey Ann Smith, and it is my absolute pleasure to be moderating this briefing this morning as we share an update on the transformation process of the education sector. Let me begin by acknowledging the Minister of Education and Youth, the Honourable Favour Williams, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education and Youth, Dr. Kassan Troop, Chairman of the Education Transformation Oversight Committee, Dr. Adrian Stokes, Acting Chief Education Officer, Ms. Terry Ann Thomas-Gale, Chief Transformation Officer in the Ministry of Education and Youth, Dr. Faith Alexander. Welcome also to the members of the Education Transformation Oversight Committee who are joining us this morning here and online, other members of the Executive Management Team of the Ministry of Education and Youth, and of course, special welcome to members of the media who are here and online to provide coverage of this very important briefing. We do have a tight agenda this morning to ensure that media get enough time to ask questions. So without further ado, let me invite our first speaker, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry, Dr. Kassan Troop, to do the official welcome and introduction.
Thank you so much, Ms. Smith, our moderator. Good morning, everyone. It is indeed my delight to welcome all of us this morning to another in our series of updates to our nation as it relates to the Transformation in Education program. Minister, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to another interface. You're not unfamiliar with the media or this platform for that matter, but today is a very important day in the Ministry of Education, and so it's my delight to welcome you representing our ministry. Dr. Stokes, thank you so much for being here. We welcome you to this interface. Dr. Stokes has had the opportunity to commit and to deliver the oversight activities, and I must say, as a recipient of his oversight commitment and dedication, I must express it that way, because every week we have an engagement with Dr. Stokes, who's interested in what's happening in the ministry, and he's committed to making sure that this nation is updated on our progress. And this morning, he's a chairman of the Education Transformation Oversight Committee, and he has the role this morning to update you on the progress. So I know you will be, of course, entertained and pleased with the updates thus far. Let me welcome our Chief Education Officer Acting, Ms. Terry Ann Thomas-Gale. You heard it earlier. She is indeed the substantive Deputy Chief Education Officer who has been promoted to Acting Chief, and we are proud of her and happy to have her. We have the Chief Transformation Education Officer as well, Dr. Alexander. You know her. She was presented at the last update to our nation, and she has been driving the technical work behind the scenes, and you will see more of her as we get out into the field and bring in the message of transformation beyond this update today. Let me welcome Vivienne Johnson, very important member in the Ministry of Education. She's actually the Deputy Chief Education Officer for our Planning and Education Development Division, a very important division in our ministry, and we are very proud of her, and we are happy to have her this morning. There are other members of the technical team. Our head from our communication unit, Mr. Stair, is here, and other members of the team. Members of the media, where would we be without you this morning? I see my own church sister smiling with me at the back. From the media, of course. But let me welcome you to this interface. We're happy to have you. You play a very important part in getting the message out there about transformation, and we are very grateful that you took the time to be with us this morning. Please feel welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, please sit back, relax. We have a treat lined up for you as we bring to you the updates of the Education Transformation Program, and more importantly, you will hear about our massive communication activities that we have planned to ensure that every single Jamaican has the issue of education transformation on their minds. Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Troop, reminding members of the media that there will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the presentation. So do note those questions. But let's get to our first presenter, Chairman of the Education Transformation Oversight Committee, Dr. Adrian Stokes.
Minister Williams, PS Troop, congratulations. Let me say that publicly. Special invited guests, senior leaders from the Ministry of Education, media professionals, persons listening online, good morning and welcome everybody. So this is another in our series of updates to the Jamaican people on the implementation of the recommendations from the Jamaica Education Transformation Committee Report of 2021, otherwise called the Patterson Report. As usual, I would like to start by thanking the members of the Education Transformation Oversight Committee, or ETOC for short. The committee continues to work with great diligence to ensure the important work of implementing the recommendations of the Patterson Report is done to a very high standard. I want to thank the Ministry of Education for their continued commitment to the transformation journey, and more importantly, for doing the actual work that will see transformation taking place within the education sector. Before I get to the substance of today's meeting, I would like to reiterate the mandate of ETOC. ETOC continues to be guided by the effective monitoring and implementation of the recommendations of the Patterson Report. It is important to reiterate that the substantive role of ETOC is one of governance. In other words, being an independent body that oversees the timely implementation of the recommendations made in the Patterson Report. So our job is not to rewrite or to do over the work already done by the Patterson Committee. I make this point because I frequently receive questions and feedback around specific recommendations made in the report and whether ETOC can change or in some way alter these recommendations. But our focus at ETOC is to ensure we get timely execution of the recommendations made so we can begin to see the tangible benefits for our people. So it's not, and I've said this before, terribly important to get all the recommendations perfect. What is more important is to have a high degree of execution. And that is our big focus at ETOC. As everyone in business and government knows, execution is difficult. Executing something as complex as transforming our education sector takes on added layers of complexity, given the layers of difficulty that you add, because you're dealing with a number of persons, you're working with several different agencies, and to coordinate all of that and to ensure that you effect execution is a very, very difficult exercise. So to this extent, we have been working to ensure a proper infrastructure is in place to ensure sustainability of the transformation thrust. For example, we have completed what I call some very important building blocks as we lay a strong foundation for the transformation effort. And I'm going to summarize 4 of the key infrastructure work completed to date. So the implementation plan was a very important initiative for us to complete. And as I indicated before, and just to remind you, an implementation plan is a logical blueprint. Recall that what we have in the Patterson report are recommendations, not necessarily initiatives that are implementable. And so we had to go through an exercise that converted, as much as possible, recommendations to actual initiatives. The second building block that we have completed is to put in place an effective monitoring and evaluation framework. And this is very important from ETOC's perspective because it gives us that opportunity to measure in a scientific way the progress of the implementation project that is underway. The other important building block that we have put in place is to strengthen the team. So we now have specialized roles at the ministry. So for example, a chief transformation officer, Dr. Alexander, was onboarded to lead the transformation effort on a day-to-day basis in the ministry. A project team has also been put in place to ensure that we have that project discipline around the execution of the transformation thrust. And the 4th building block, and we said it last press conference, that was importantly finalized is the approval by cabinet of a budget for the transformation effort. And the minister will speak more fulsomely on the budget. But suffice to say, we now have an approved budget. This is a very, very important development. I would also like to say that there are other important reforms taking place at the Ministry of Education. Recall that one of the important recommendations coming from the Patterson report is for the modernization or the transformation itself of the ministry to make it fit for purpose to implement the recommendations. So I'm happy to say that the ministry is well advanced with onboarding, let's call them specialists / consultants, who will guide the crafting of the initiatives that will move the ministry to a world-class institution. Before I talk about the progress of the implementation to date, I would like to give persons a synopsis of how the transformation project is organized. And as I indicated before, we have built some important building blocks to ensure that the foundation for transformation is strong. One of the building blocks is to ensure the project is properly organized. It has all the rudiments, the robustness of projects that you see worldwide, and the disciplines that usually come with executing large and complex projects, that those are guiding the implementation of the recommendations of the Patterson report. So what you're looking at there, and this is just a synopsis, what we have done is to share with you the recommendations that will be completed within a 2-year period. And keep in mind that there are 365 recommendations. So what we have done this morning is just to give the media a sense of each pillar, under each pillar, the initiatives that have been highlighted to be finalized within a 2-year period, right? So if you look under the first pillar, there are a number of initiatives that will start in Q1 of year 1 And we're currently in year one, and year one is the current fiscal year that started in April and will be completed in March 2024. So if you look at the slide deck, what you'll see are the various, let's call them time milestones for the completion of these important initiatives. And under Pillar 2, Early Childhood Education, again, you will see a number of initiatives that are slated. In fact, they have started already, and work will continue on these initiatives through to August 2025. That is the 2-year period that is slated for a number of these initiatives to be finalized. So again, the objective is not to, in the interest of time, to go through all of the initiatives here. What we wanted to do was to share with the public the discipline, the project management discipline that has been adopted for the transformation effort. So let me go to the essence of why we're here today, just to speak on the progress of the implementation of the recommendations to date. So for this period, ETOC is reporting a number of important progress points, and I will list 5 of them. The minister will talk more fulsomely on the work that the ministry completed over the last quarter. So we are reporting that there has been significant progress made with the finalization of the Jamaica Teaching Council bill. So that's one important initiative that is underway and is tracking well. We're also reporting progress with the improvement in the accounting system across all schools. That's very, very important when we speak to governance and accountability with regards to financial management. Ensuring that you have an accounting system that can track and keep proper records is very, very important as we seek to improve governance within the school system. The ministry has started to roll out the Education Management Information System, what they call EMIS for short. And this is a key technology that will improve tracking and monitoring of KPIs within the education sector. TVET expansion plan is now fairly advanced. And again, the minister will speak more fulsomely on that. And finally, good progress has been made with the elimination of the shift system in schools. In fact, I think the target for the current year is significantly achieved. And I will await further word in terms of how we proceed for the rest of this year. And in fact, if we should have a more aggressive target, Minister and PS, for the de-shifting of our schools. Now, at our last press conference, we highlighted communication as a key initiative that the ministry needed to improve. I must commend the ministry for onboarding a communication professional that will or has, in fact, started to do significant work, working with the professionals in the ministry to improve how the ministry communicates with the public. Again, the minister will talk more about the communication effort, but ETOC is encouraged by the move at the ministry to bring in talent, to work, to augment existing talent so that the communication effort can be ramped up. Now, while there are notable positives and progress to date, ETOC notes that there are some initiatives that are lagging, and I want to list 4 of them. One initiative that requires more work to bring it up to date is making the reports from the NEI, the National Education Inspectorate, public. So that's the first one that is lagging, and attention is needed to bring that to a current status. The second one is in the early childhood sector, the initiative that calls for improved staffing and training of the team in the early childhood sector. That's a critical sector, and work needs to be advanced in a more significant way in surrounding that initiative. The third one, and this has the important role of really transforming our education sector, and that has to do with the implementation of broadband infrastructure in schools. Right? Very, very important initiatives. Sorry. This one is lagging, and I know that there are some procurement issues surrounding the full rollout, but it is quite a substantial, piece of work to be done. It's quite substantive, something that will impact lives in a very big way. And again, we are encouraging the ministry to ensure that the work here is advanced in a serious way. The other important initiative that's lagging that I want to highlight, it's the procurement of what I will call key technological resources, mostly I would say software, to aid the project management process. As you know, we ultimately want to get to a point where we can have the updates available to the public by clicking on a link or clicking in a website, right? That requires some work in the back end, including how we organize a project to begin with in a digital way. And there is some work to be done there to ensure that the database, how we store the project data, is done in a way that makes users able to access that data. So ETOC has been having ongoing dialogue with the ministry on how it intends to get back on track with these initiatives. We have received the commitment of the permanent secretary, Dr. Troop. She has a lot of energy. She has just been installed, so fresh and raring to go. We have also received the commitment of the minister to ensure we get back on track with the initiatives within the shortest possible time. As I indicated before, the budget that was proposed to Cabinet to drive the implementation plan has now been green-lighted by Cabinet. And I'm sure everybody will want to hear what the number is, what the budget for the implementation of the recommendation, what that budget is. And I leave that to the minister, right? Minister, I hope you have some definitive word for the public this morning. But what I want to say from ETOC's perspective is that the approval of the budget is a significant commitment by the government to ensure the transformation effort will be funded, not just for this year or the next, but importantly funded for multiple periods, right? If you look at the plan that we have for the implementation of the recommendations, that plan goes or cuts across multiple periods, right? So it's important to ensure that we have that commitment from central government to provide the funds to the Ministry of Education to drive the transformation plan. So I would like to conclude by reassuring the Jamaican people that the work to transform the education sector is on in earnest. From our interactions with the ministry, and in particular the permanent secretary and the minister, they are working very, very hard to ensure we have broad-based implementation of the recommendations. The soon-to-be-launched public campaign by the ministry will drive greater public awareness and ensure that we have the support, the buy-in for the transformation process. I want to thank you for your continued input, your interest in the implementation of the recommendations. I conclude my remarks here, and I look forward to your questions following the presentation of the minister. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stokes. We really do appreciate the work that has been put in under your stewardship of ETOC. We are going to now invite the Minister of Education and Youth, the Honorable Favour Williams, to make her presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Let me acknowledge our moderator, Ms. Stacey Ann Smith, Dr. Stokes, and members of ETOC. Let me acknowledge as well PS Troop and the entire team of the Ministry of Education and Youth, those who are online and those who are here in person, members of the media. Thank you as always for carrying our story, the good news from the education sector. Permit me, before I begin, to congratulate, on behalf of the Ministry of Education and Youth, the Jamaica's team that won gold at the Robotics Olympics in Singapore. They took home the Katherine Johnson Award for Engineering Documentation. And as you know, you might have read, this award is named after African-American mathematician Katherine Johnson, who helped to calculate aeronautics that helped guide the return of astronauts John Glenn and Alan Shepard to Earth from space. The award that the Jamaican team got went to the team that best demonstrated the efforts it took to build their robot. And of course, the Jamaican team was captained by Jonathan Smith from Campion College and included Sean Michael Ferguson, also from Campion, Duncan Stanley from Wilmer's Boys School, Glenmuir High School's Terence Grant, Kimmy Chan from Hillel Academy, and Tajay Lee Hall Watts from AISK. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an example of the greatness that resides in our students and for whom we must continue the transformation work. This morning, I am really excited to be here as part of the reporting that ETOC, which is the Education Transformation Oversight Committee, is committed to doing to keep the nation up to date on the education transformation work at the Ministry of Education and Youth and across the length and breadth of the education system. I recall the first time ETOC presented, Dr. Stokes used the analogy of a flywheel to describe the transformation. I'm sure he can recount that. But let me try. The flywheel effect basically is a concept developed in this book called Good to Great. And it says, no matter how dramatic the end result, good to great transformations never happen in one fell swoop. In building a great company, social sector enterprise, or a great education sector, there's no single defining action, no grand program, no killer app, no killer innovation, no solitary lucky break, no miracle moment. Rather, the process resembles relentlessly pushing a giant, heavy flywheel, turn up and turn, building momentum until a point of breakthrough and beyond. We believe we are at the point of breakthrough in transformation. So the first slide that you will see, go back, is not just a pretty slide, it really speaks to our new mindset, the logo and the tagline for transformation, which is TREND, transforming education for national development, and all of this for a brighter tomorrow. We held a series of consultations with key stakeholders across the education landscape and otherwise. We asked what would be the title, what should be the title for transformation? How do we communicate it in a succinct way? And of the many ideas that were floated, the acronym TREND emerged. The young people liked it, our teachers liked it as well, and so we have adopted TREND, transforming education for national development, as our acronym. If you move on to slide 2, to set the context, and you heard the chairman speak to this, the Orlando Patterson-led transformation report has 365 recommendations. Implementation work has started on 93 of them, which equates to about 25% of the total recommendations. There are 7 pillars. Of course, this morning I'm not going to talk about all 365. But suffice it to say, we're giving you a framework within which to understand these many recommendations. So there are 7 pillars, and aligned with those pillars are the 365 recommendations. We've done a lot of preliminary work. The chairman of ETOC has the Ministry of Education and Youth on a weekly reporting, and you heard him talk about the implementation plan, the monitoring and evaluation, project management, and so on. What is very important to note is that we have incorporated the transformation activities in the broader operational plan of the ministry. So transformation is not happening over there and the ministry's work is happening over here. It has come together and we're all of one mind. Transformation is what we do now at the Ministry of Education and Youth and across the regions. So we've gone through building out our communication plan. Our specialist is on board, our moderator for this morning, and we have persons to lead the secretariat. So the first, in terms of the recommendations, the first one, as you know, was to establish the Education Transformation Oversight Committee. And I'm sorry about the number, but that's 100%. You've seen the Oversight Committee. They're here. It's a call for us to implement greater governance and accountability. And the first level of accountability is ETOC, an external body, to really look at what we are saying versus what we're doing. And you heard that report this morning from the chairman. The entity is in place and has been actively interrogating the work on the recommendations. And here we are this morning. The big recommendation coming out of the report is the implementation of the Jamaica Teaching Council bill. Again, the chairman reported on that as to where we are. As you know, this bill dates back to 2004. We have been sitting in Parliament for almost 2 years to consider the recommendations that came from submissions from various stakeholders. And we have been putting together the final bill for Parliament, or expectation or hope we're working towards by the end of this fiscal year, and then the regulations thereafter. Next page, please. The Orlando-led Patterson report also called on us to have a centralized accounting system. We've reached out to our international partner, IDB. We'll pilot a platform that will be aligned with the government's GIFMIS, which is the Government Information and Financial Management System. As you know, the administration of education is a mammoth system. It has 16 agencies, 7 regions. There's the central ministry, 1,010 primary and secondary schools, plus early childhood sector, plus the tertiary sector. And we believe we are about 35% of the way there in terms of getting the centralized accounting system into our schools. We've been encouraged by the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service to move with alacrity. We have received some funding. We're moving through the training. We will pilot 50 of our schools, and we'll review and then scale the system. Our primary schools in particular are very delighted at this effort because, as you know, they do not currently have bursars within their schools, and so a lot of the burden of the financial work is on the principal. So to the extent that we can have this system already, they can't wait to see the implementation of it. Next page, please. One of the things the education system has not done very well is to make public information about the education system that will help Jamaicans understand the education sector. The transformation report recommends that we must make public the financials of schools, the academic standing, and the National Education Inspectorate report. And all of these should be published in the interest of transparency, not to punish, but to support and help our schools. We are about 70% of the way there, even though by our own measure we're lagging, but we are picking up the pace to get that done. Next slide, please. All right, so the next recommendation calls on us to implement an education management information system, EMIS for short. This will include behavior alert system, attendance tracking, and academic performance. Just to say a little bit on the attendance tracking, this is for our students. As you know, absenteeism at our schools is an issue. Yes, we have an available space for all our students, but they don't always show up every day of school. We need to get a better handle on it. Yes, we do have data currently, but the data comes to us late, quite late, because it's a manual process in place right now. And so when you get that data a year behind, right, because it's being collected and collated, there's not much that we can do with that data. So to have an electronic system that to help us do the attendance of students will alert us very quickly if a particular student is absent 3, 4, 5 days. So then we can immediately, almost immediately, try to find out what's going on in the home. Is this child ill or has moved? What is happening? So I'm looking forward to the full implementation and rollout of that. The behavior alert system is another very exciting system, and I believe our teachers in the classrooms will love it because it will enable them to put notes into the system so that the guidance counselors in the schools can be alerted, and there'll be a track to see, is this particular child coming up more than once? And therefore, you can bring counseling service to the child before it gets to the point where a fight erupts at school, and then, you know, it's a little bit too late then. So we have these different programs through the EMIS system that we will be rolling out into our schools. As you know, we had significant work done in terms of assessment of what we have currently, and we were rated incipient, meaning early stage. We have many different software across the ministry. They don't communicate with each other, so we're working with UNESCO to help to build out this education management information system to help us. We were advised to do the rollout on a parish by parish basis so that we can get the learning, and we'll be starting with Kingston and then moving on to St. Andrew. Primary school principals, again, are excited. We have 767 principals. We have employed a team of data entry persons who will go into the schools to do the heavy lifting and help them. But this will help us with our monitoring and with our support that we're providing to schools. Next slide, please. We move now to Pillar 2, early childhood education. We have to move to certification. We're down the wicket with registration, but many of our early childhood institutions are not fully registered. Since the report, we've moved aggressively to get all schools registered. As you know, the government has 70 infant schools and 300 infant departments. All of our government infant schools and departments are registered. The hard work now is the certification. The report calls on us to prioritize 120 early childhood institutions within areas of poverty for certification. We've identified those. Our 100% means the prioritization, getting out there into the field and identifying those schools. So this is the early work, and hence the 100%. Now we have to move to actually do the certification. We've invested some $15 million to work with schools, who the ECC says they're at about 80% certification. They only need a little bit more to get them over the hurdle, and so we'll be working with those schools. We've gotten significant feedback from the schools that have been prioritized. Of course, they are very willing, and they're encouraging us to begin. Next slide, please. Next. All right, the report also calls on us to improve staffing and training in the early childhood institutions. We've completed about 40% of what we're supposed to do. This is lagging. Our plan is to ensure that we have at least a trained professional in all of our early childhood institutions, whether they're private or public, because in our assessment, it has been determined that that is the single most important factor that we have to ensure that we have in our schools. So work is underway there. That's a budget item, and so we have to move in tandem with the budgets that we have, but it is the goal to do that. Next. Support for parents of young children, including increased parenting programs. I am always happy to talk about that. The ECC itself, the Early Childhood Commission, is way ahead in terms of in supporting parents. They have very active parenting centers. From the perspective of the Central Ministry, we're working with the Ministry of National Security in an interministerial program along with the EU, and you would have heard prior announcements from us that for the last academic year, we managed to touch, and this is our latest numbers at the time I reported it, then the number then was over 40,000, but since then with more data collected, we're seeing that we've been able to touch over 60,000 parents under this ministerial framework. And the target for this academic year in which we are is 100,000 parents. And that's a very high impact initiative. We know that our parents are extremely important in the lives of their children. The report also calls on us to improve services for children with disabilities and their families. We, in terms of the initial work to be done, we're saying it's 100%, but let me qualify. Going forward, each year, there's always going to be much more to do. And let me say what it is that we've done already. We've partnered with 17 private entities to provide assessments. We've established 15 special ed units in our schools, and by that we mean the children are placed in this unit. They're pulled out from their regular class, they're taught for 2 years, and then reintegrated into their classroom. Obviously, we need many more of these special ed units, but this is where we are as a ministry now, and we will continue to improve the services for children with disabilities. Next, please. Our third pillar is teaching curriculum and teacher training. And this is where we, in subsequent meetings, we'll talk about the philosophy of education and the work that we're doing there. We've narrowed that down to 2, and we're circulating it, and I'm sure in short order we'll be able to share that with you as a philosophy that will guide the education sector. Teacher training, which is also part of this pillar, teacher training and professional development, that has been led for many years now by the Jamaica Teaching Council. They've provided electronic platform for teachers to go on. We want to move into a self-paced learning environment because you know that learning is lifelong. We continue to work with our teachers over time to get them more professional development and have it so it's at their convenience, so they can log on any time of the day or night and catch up on professional development. Move on to the next. The extracurriculum framework, we started to do some work there. We're about 10% on track, and that is making sure that in all of our schools, our students have the ability to have extracurricular activities. It's not just around their lessons, but in terms of other things that they can get engaged with. So uniform groups, 4-H clubs, Girl Guides, Brownies, environmental clubs, science club, math club. These ask of the students to be attached to something bigger than themselves. And we want all of our children to be exposed to these extracurricular activities in their schools. We know it's going to take a lot of effort to build out, there'll be a lot of manpower required, but we are committed because of the impact that that will have on their learning. Next page, please. The report also calls on us to ensure that we have safe schools. As you know, we're back in the face-to-face environment, and unfortunately, Ever so often, we see the fights in schools. We see it as children are going to school or going home from school as well. All of principals across the length and breadth of the education system want their schools to be safe. But we recognize that many things happen outside of schools. So we have to continue to work on the minds of our students so that they will feel empowered to choose differently than they're choosing right now, especially when they get into a conflict situation. We also, in our schools, are pulling together the HFLE, Health and Family Life Education Specialists, or Deans of Discipline, or guidance counselors, and others who lead our civics curriculum. We're pulling them together as a team, and they're designated as the behavior change team. Over the years, we've had these different specialists in our schools, but they've operated individually. We believe that there is more to be gained from bringing them together as the behavior change team to work with our schools. For this year, we've given our schools additional resources to help to support the collaborative working of the team. Next slide, please. Pillar 4, the tertiary sector. Within Pillar 4, the big nut to crack there is financing of tertiary. It's for us to also finalize the Higher Education Act and policy. Just this week, I attended a colloquium at UWI where we met with, and yesterday we met with leaders of just the Jamaica Union of Tertiary Students, and financing of tertiary is at the top of their agenda. Capri has done some very interesting work in terms of putting forward some models. We are going to be interrogating those seriously in order to see if we can't begin to improve or increase the number of students into tertiary. Next slide. Pillar 5, TVET in Jamaica. For us, in our high schools, that is where our TVET lives primarily. Our TVET expansion plan is real. We have $400 million from HART to support TVET. We will invest all of this in the TVET areas in our schools. Our high schools, many of them deliver up to 5 subject areas in TVET. The grants that they will receive will help to buy materials. Our plan is to upgrade the labs in 55 of our schools and create what we're calling 5 workforce-ready labs in 5 of our schools. We'll continue to do the capacity building and modernization. Next, please. Pillar 6 of 7, infrastructure and technology. Yes, Mr. Chairman indicated that we are behind in terms of infrastructure and technology. This is where the major work is. If you read through the report, a lot needs to be done for maintenance in our schools. We have been picking up the pace. We've just recently, in the recent supplementary, got some $80 million to help us to do what we call the pre-investment work. So if there's major infrastructure work to be done at a school, we might need to do the geotechnical, we need to do the drawings and so forth. So we've gotten some funding for that, and you'll begin to see us roll out things faster there. But in terms of the broadband infrastructure in our schools, we're about 50% of the way there. The chairman noted that we're lagging in that, but he also noted that it was quite a bit of manual work required to lay fiber optic cables, to take them up to the school, to connect it to the school, to make sure they're getting the service. But we meet every week on a Wednesday afternoon to track the progress. It's an interministerial group that meets, that includes the Ministry of Science, Energy, Telecommunication and Transport, plus the Ministry of Education and Youth, Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, the OPM, yes, all those ministries eGov as an entity, NAA as an entity, USF, e-learning that provides the support to our schools. We meet and we are making progress, Mr. Chairman. It's heavy lifting. This is the flywheel. That, you know, what we're cranking, and our schools that have received it, they are elated. Just last week I went to Shortwood Primary and Infant, Shortwood Practicing Primary and Infant, and the principal was, oh gosh, he was over the moon in terms of their technology, yes. Next, please. Yes. So in terms of infrastructure, our big push has been the de-shifting of schools. There were 38 schools. We're down to 32. We would have broken ground on Bridgeport, Exchange. Even though Exchange was kind of was coming off the shift, they still needed some additional classrooms. So we're doing that. We're down the wicket there on that. And as you heard me say, we've gotten some $80 million to do the pre-investment work that needs to be done to roll out the infrastructure in our schools. Next slide, please. And STEAM in schools, we've talked about that quite a bit in terms of the infrastructure that needs to be put in, but also once you have the infrastructure, you know, the resources that go in there. And we have been speaking with our international partners. We have at least 2 of them on board. Land has been identified. We're working with DBJ in terms of just the plan that needs to be put in, and we are down the wicket. Pretty soon, in short order, you should begin to see more visible work out of this. And finally, Pillar 7, financing of schools. And what this really speaks to is that we should be looking at a different model to finance our primary and our high schools in particular. Currently, it's the way we do it is on a per student basis. So you might be in a school and you need more because the students need more support. This particular pillar in the Orlando Patterson-led report calls on us to look at differentiated financing, meaning those who need more should get more. Next slide, please. It also calls on us to build a framework to facilitate adequate funding to early childhood and primary education through consultancy, and we are moving apace to get that done. You heard me talk earlier about the trained teacher in each early childhood institution, public or private, and we will be doing this as we go along over the years. Next slide. And finally, I want to just focus again on our communication effort, our robust communication plan. Believe it or not, the report also called on us to have that. The ministry is huge, it's a behemoth, 25,000 teachers, 15,000 administrators, many agencies, many regions, and so on. We need to put in place a robust communication plan to help Jamaicans understand, to give them visibility into the system so that they know what we're doing, and we have begun that process. You will hear, you will feel it in the days and weeks ahead. You notice I didn't say the years ahead because it's happening right now. So you will begin to hear our jingle. Schools will begin to see us, our pop-up tours, town hall meetings, radio and TV advertisements, and so on. All in the interest, not just to jump up, but to bring you information you can relate to, that you can say, yeah, I understand that. Education is trending. They're really doing something there. That's what we want Jamaicans to conclude. because we're transforming education for national development. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Minister. We will get education trending in this country because, as I keep telling my team, this work has generational impact. It's not just a work. It's not just a project. It's something that's going to impact all our people for generations to come. And that, for me, is very inspiring and motivating. Well, ladies and gentlemen of the media, we will now go into the Q&A section of this briefing. Please do raise your hand and be acknowledged. And once you are acknowledged, you will state your name and the organization with which you are affiliated and proceed with your question. Our technical team will have a roving microphone for those persons who do have questions. So you may go right ahead and raise your hand.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jamila Maitland from TVJ. Minister, can you just confirm that the budget of 4.5 billion was approved by Cabinet, and to what extent would it be used for the areas that are lagging, that the chairman would have mentioned?
Okay. Thank you for that question, Jamila. I honestly don't know where that 4.5 billion came from. I can say to you that I presented to Cabinet the estimate that was done up by Mona School of Business. They took all the recommendations. They looked over an 8-year period and brought their best minds to help us figure out what would it cost, right? So this is a best estimate that we have, which I presented to Cabinet. And it really runs about 1.5% of GDP annually. And when you break that down, about 2/3 of the cost, or about 1% of GDP annually, is projected for infrastructure and technology. So to the extent that there is spending already done, the press report might have been quoting the kind of significant spend in especially the technology area already that we have done. So we're still refining the budget, as you know, given this is over at least 8 years, then we have to see how it fits in to the annual budgets. Yes, our estimate is 1.5% of GDP annually, but we have to look at that, prioritize what we can get done during that fiscal year, and make sure that it fits in to the national budget as well.
I wanted the figure.
1.5% of GDP annually. Well, we have a GDP of about 15 billion USD. Well, when you convert it to Jamaican dollars, it's probably about 30 to 35 billion Jamaican dollars. And again, I have to nuance that. I don't want to see a headline that says we're going to spend 30 to 35 billion annually for transformation. That's not the headline. This is an estimate of what this report and the 365 recommendations will cost if we are able to implement it over an 8-year period. We have to work within the confines of our national budget, and the national budget is formulated annually. So for us as a ministry, we have to look and see what are the things we can reasonably implement during the fiscal year and work to get that in the particular budget year and ensure that we complete it. So again, this is an estimate that was done by a professional. We accepted the estimate, we presented it to cabinet, but it's not to say this is exactly, precisely the spend that we're going to see. That would be impossible.
Good morning, Jordana Murphy from Jamaica Information Service. Minister, how many schools are being targeted for removal from the shift system over the next 2 years? And secondly, will schools with multi-level classrooms be transformed in this process?
Ask you to define multi-level class. You're talking about one,
So
two, three
there are
floors?
some
or?
schools with grade 5 and 6 students in one classroom,
Okay.
being
I see what you
instructed by one teacher.
All right. All right. So let me start with the shift school. I know that there's some incorrect information out there. Prior to the pandemic, when I asked about shift schools, the number I got was 38. During the process, where we are right now, actually, with the work that has been done, there are 32 schools still on shift. This year, this school year that we're in, this fiscal year, well, the school year, I should say, 2 schools are underway, Bridgeport. We broke ground on Bridgeport, and we're expecting to go back by the beginning of the next school year to cut the ribbon on Bridgeport, and that would officially take that school off shift. We've also are adding some additional classrooms at Exchange Primary. Right, they were de-shifted, but they're still in need of some additional classrooms, and so the work has started there. As you know, Black River was officially de-shifted with additional classrooms and all the infrastructure work that goes with that, expanded bathroom facilities, expanded teacher staff rooms, and so on, labs that go with that, and so that's the work that we have been doing to de-shift our schools. With regards to schools with multi-grades in them, only in small primary schools, multi-grade schools, you really will see that. In some schools, maybe, if they do not have a particular specialist teacher, they may combine classes, but it's not widespread in the system.
Morning again. My question is for the chairman this time. Chairman, the last couple of press conference we had, you weren't so pleased with the progress. I sense a little bit of excitement, but you can just expound on me, where are we on track with that 2-year projection that you outlined? And what's the timeline? Do you see some of these issues that are lagging? What's the timeline that you see that it could come on track?
So the infrastructure ones are, I would say, fairly complex for obvious reasons. The issue of the broadband rollout, as the minister indicated, they are working assiduously. Our job is to ensure that we provide whatever support, but importantly, to work with the ministry to find ways to speed up the implementation. The making public the NER reports, I think that's an easy win, Minister. I'm not sure why that would take very long for us to get that back on track, PS through. So I'm very hopeful that those reports, or at least a framework, can be put in place to make those reports public in an ongoing way, right? So I think that's a low-hanging fruit, right? The acquiring of technological support, right? I think they are looking to use a system called Asana, I believe. They require a particular license to make it functional for the purpose of managing the project. For example, having the persons who are actually doing the work update their initiative in real time, and so that the data can be consolidated and sliced and diced in different dimensions. I think they're fairly advanced. In fact, I had a discussion with the PS yesterday, who assured me that she's working with the team to move that forward. And so I expect that to be finalized within the near term. With these projects, and as I indicated before, these complex projects, you're going to have things moving around, from one quarter to the next. I think what's important, and this is something that I've been stressing with the ministry, is to ensure that the infrastructure is in place, right? Because what that does, it ensures predictability, it ensures that you can pull different levers to get back on track, right? Importantly, ensuring that you have the right people, right? The talent is in place, because that's very, very important as well. That is an ongoing process, right? They have done some work to onboard key personnels. The communication drive is an example of that. They have brought on top talent to work with the ministry to augment the team that is at the ministry. And what you're seeing, for example, on screen, trend and all of that lovely looking, graphic that you're looking at there, that is an example of the output that we're seeing from the communication team. So I'm very, very happy that once they move into, let's say, full launch around communication, we're going to have, or at least see, a much better output from the ministry. And importantly, it is being done in a way to ensure sustainability. Because what we're trying to avoid is, in one quarter, we have some good results on the communication front, and then it falls off going forward. Transformation must be sustainable, which means that the processes, the systems, the people have to be in place. It's not reliant on an individual. And so it's taken a bit of work, but I'm very confident that the commitment is there, at least at the top of the house, at the leadership level, to do what is necessary to get back on track with the initiatives that are lacking.
Minister, what is the cost of the robust communication plan that will be implemented, and how soon will school tours and town halls begin?
All right, the school tours will start in a couple of weeks, I'm told. We're just getting all the collateral together. And the town hall is the 2nd of November. In terms of the cost of this, Dr. Troop, okay, Dr. Troop just gave me the answer. $34 million. Right. Remember, it's a huge ministry, and it's overtime. It's not just a one-time payment. It continues over several activities over time tours, jingles, material, TV ads, radio ads, and so forth.
Jamila again from TVJ. Can you just confirm the accounting officer for the program right now? Is it the Chief Transformation Officer, or is that still the permanent secretary? And for the Chief Transformation Officer, can we hear from her about what's been happening since we last met?
So for the first question, it's the permanent secretary who is the Chief Accounting Officer. Dr. Choop, you want to add anything to that? Okay. All right, okay.
Good morning. As far as what has been happening with the transformation effort, we have been spending a lot of time on the technical work. As both Dr. Stokes and the Minister have said, we are putting in place the infrastructure, so that means the monitoring and evaluation framework. We have been meeting with all the process owners, and you would have seen from Dr. Stokes' presentation the various milestones and so on that have been achieved and that we are currently working on. And as far as Asana, as Dr. Stokes had mentioned, this is the software that will be used to track the information so that process owners and the public at large may receive reports in a timely manner, whether it be monthly or quarterly. So as far as the transformation is concerned, we are assiduously working on the technical aspects of the program.
We do have a question from a reporter on Zoom from Nationwide. Please go ahead with your question now. All right, the
Hello.
team is... Okay, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, my question to Minister Williams is, has there been any collaboration with the National Security Ministry to help in the completion of the safety in schools part of Pillar 3, I believe?
Absolutely. We work hand in hand with the Ministry of National Security and our international partner, the EU, and safety and security in our schools. We have a very ambitious program with parenting. We are running in several of our schools literacy programs to help our students, because we're understanding, and we've seen not just an understanding, we've seen demonstration of when our students are better able to read, how that changes their behavior. So we're coming at this from a lot of different angles, not just from the guidance counselors, the deans of discipline, not just from that angle, which is important, but also looking at the students, understanding the home from which they come, interfacing with the parents, so that we can bring together all of this to help the students and to get to that point where we are confident about the safety and security of our schools.
Thank you so much for that, Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time. For members of the media who may still have questions, I invite you to reach out to the Communications Division of the Ministry of Education. Many of you are familiar with the Director of Communications, Mr. Colin Steer, who will be happy, I'm sure, to provide any additional information that you may need. We are now at the end of this morning's media briefing of the Education Transformation Oversight Committee. Thank you for attending. We appreciate your questions and the opportunity to share an update, this very important update on the transformation process. I'm Stacey Ann Smith, and it has been a pleasure indeed to be your moderator. Do have yourselves a safe and productive day.